Good evening and welcome to the Black Consciousness Festival and the fifth of our 20 conversations for 2020. Thank you for joining us on Zoom, via webinar, and on Facebook Live. The Black Consciousness Festival provides a global online platform for the commemoration, celebration, and sharing of vital histories and stories that boost the awareness and impact of the pride, power, and practice of people of African descent. The festival builds awareness around how each of us can take the necessary steps for restitution, healing, and repair. Tonight, it gives me extreme pleasure to introduce my friend, Janelle Penny Commissiong, who will lead our conversation. After winning the Miss Trinidad and Tobago Universe title, Janelle Penny Commissiong went on to be crowned Miss Universe 1977 in Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic, and in the process became the first Black woman to win the prestigious pageant crown. She studied at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. During her reign, she was an advocate for Black rights and world peace. Commissiong was awarded the Trinity Cross, the country's highest award, in 1977. She has served in many leadership positions across the private and public sector and has an extensive record of community service, including mentoring female community leaders, being a motivational speaker to young women, and serving as a patron of the National AIDS Foundation. Welcome and enjoy tonight's conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. It's my pleasure to be the conversation lead in today's conversation, being Black in the beauty industry. And joining me in this conversation is Hilda Diaz and Sheryland Neal. Hilda Diaz is the founder of HDA Agency, Brazil's first and only model agency specializing in Black and brown models. HDA Agency, based in São Paulo, was created to fill the Black models gap present at the time. Hilda was also involved in a lot of very current activities, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So Hilda, seja bem-vindo to today's conversation. This evening's second participant is Sheryland Neal. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Sheryland is a prolific screenwriter, photographer, filmmaker, dancer, and documentarian. In 2018, Sheryland competed in the Noite da Beleza Negra, Aiyê, making her the first American to ever compete in this beauty competition. Welcome, Sheryland. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about our participants as the evening progresses. In 2013, Naira Justino of Brazil won the Miss Globazale, excuse the attempt at Portuguese, a carnival queen by public vote. However, some in Brazil regarded her dark complexion as too dark to be an acceptable queen. I have to tell you that when I read that, I was really shocked at what I read, mainly because I've always viewed Brazil as brown and Black. So therefore reading that, it kind of, took me a bit by surprise. So I'm thinking that the Brazilian women that we see during Brazil's carnival, especially the carnival that represents Brazil, that perhaps is not the reality. So I'm going to ask Hilda to come in here and just kind of bring us up to date on what is the real reality in terms of brown and Black women in Brazil.
Olá, boa noite a todos. Eu sou Helder Dias, tenho 53 anos.
I'm 53 years old, from Bahia in São Paulo. I arrived here in 97 and I created the first agency that is specialized in Black models. I wanted to thank the invite and say it's a pleasure to be here in this moment with these two beautiful women. It's really a pleasure to me being here. So about Brazil and racism, Nayara Justino won the pageant in 2014 through a selection that was done in local television. The biggest dream of Nayara was to participate in the Sambandromo uh, in the walks, the catwalks that the carnival schools do. Because straight after she won the contest, she received a lot of critics. She received a wave of racism and insults, saying that she was too black, that her skin was too dark, and she did not represent the Globaliza woman. I have a friend that works in Central Rede Globo, and she told me off notes that she would receive every day hundreds of calls saying that Nayara couldn't be Globaliza and that she needed to be removed because she was too dark, too black. And when that movement happened to remove her from that title that she gained from popular vote, the Guardian manifested themselves publicly repudiating that attitude, shaming that attitude. Uh, the problem on Ayara here is that she didn't receive support from the Black movement. They didn't create a movement, we are all Nayara. And she felt sad about not receiving that support from the Black community. She suffered from depression, was really sad, and but soon after she received a role in a soap opera called Escrava Mãe or Slave Mother, and that's when she gained some viewership and Black people here are only seen during Carnival. Yeah, because Black woman has a better body, Black woman can samba, Black woman has the history of Blackness here in Brazil, and we can't deny that to the Black population here in Brazil. But despite all of that visibility, the Black people here, they do not get the money. Who gets the money, who capitalizes on this money is the white people. The Black people just do the spectacle, nothing else. It's basically that.
I find it interesting when you say that the blacks are only seen at carnival time. When you look at the population of Brazil, which is what, 205 million, and the brown and blacks are 50, if I read correctly, 54 and 56%. That is 115 million people that you can't hide 115 million people. So that's really incredible. And it seems to me that perhaps the economic is what dictates a lot of what goes on. Sheryland, you spent some time in Brazil. Do you want to come in here in terms of your experience?
Sure. So I also want to express my gratitude for participating, or being asked to participate in this conversation. I think it's very important and I'm honored to be here. My time in Brazil was amazing. When I went to go compete in Brazil, it was my second time in Brazil. My first time in Brazil was as a musical tourist of sorts. And it was the first time I saw a distinctly Afro-Indigenous representation of Brazilians in Brazil. And my mind was blown. I remember seeing a presentation from the women in Muzenza in the Pelourinho, And I was in the audience with my DSLR, my camera, crying because I had never seen such an exalted image of Black women. And not just Black women, but women who were dark like me, who were tall like me, who were wide like me, who didn't have European features or Eurocentric features. And in seeing them on the stage being paraded and cheered for not only their physical beauty and the attributes that I saw in myself, but also their grace. As a Black woman in America, the grace of dark-skinned women is not necessarily something that's put on the forefront as much. So when I was in Brazil the first time and I saw all this, I'd never seen it before. And even though I'm not a Brazilian, in seeing these beautiful women that I, in my own way, resonated with, I felt seen. Now, the longer I spent in Brazil, I did notice that there was a distinct lack of dark brown faces, Black people, Afro-Indigenous people, Indigenous people on television, in the soap operas, in the sitcoms. Of course, the media that was imported, there were Black people there. I saw a dubbed episode of Everybody Hates Chris, and I was tickled, but we were there. But in terms of the programming that was produced by Brazilians, the newscasters, I didn't really see much of us there. I tried not to be too critical because I have to remind myself to check my privilege, not to examine somebody else's life or somebody else's existence so harshly through an American lens. I understand that there is a nuance there that I have to also respect. But as an American on the outside looking in, I did notice a distinct lack of brown, Black, Afro-Indigenous people in the media. But as soon as you turn off the television, the streets are filled with sun-beating beauties, and it was lovely.
Sheryland, I'm listening to you, and it's a little bit of deja vu when you say that the media is important and you didn't see much, many Black images, because that was my experience 43 years ago in the Dominican Republic, and which is why, things happen as they must. I believe that it was important that winning that title in the Dominican Republic, that was very important. Because the Dominican Republic 43 years ago was very different than the Dominican Republic that we see and the Dominicans that we see today. Again, there was a lot of media there for the 3 weeks that we were in the Dominican Republic for the competition. But every day when you looked at the newspapers, you only saw—
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of difficulty hearing you. Let me see if I can adjust on my end.
Is everyone else hearing me? While Sheryland is adjusting, I just want to say to our viewing audience that we're trying to make this as interactive as possible. So please send us your questions, and during the course of the dialogue, the participants will respond to your questions. So let's make it interactive. Is that a little better, Sheryland? A little better?
Not really. It sounds like you're very far away. I'll just lean closer to my computer, so hopefully you don't mind my passage.
My volume is up. Well, let me put it up a little more. Better?
A little better. I'll just listen carefully.
Okay. Right. So I was talking about my experience in the Dominican Republic with regards to media and the images that you saw. So every day you saw the newspapers and there was tremendous coverage, and you only saw the Caucasian contestants. You never saw the contestants of color. So that listening to you, I mean, it's 40 years later, it seems not much has changed in terms of that as it relates to the media. So
Right.
what's the answer to that? Hilda, you're in the, in the modeling business. So come in here. What do you see as the answer to that?
Boa
Yeah,
pergunta.
that's a good question. Getting from her what she started speaking, we have three Black Miss Brazil. This Nunes from Porto Alegre, Paisa Santana from 2017, and the woman, black woman from POB that won Miss Brazil. That for happiness and our representation here, it means a lot. Mira Lopez from Angola came here to contest for the Miss Universe, and she was elected for that year. But the local news did not give enough attention. The woman was elected the most beautiful woman in the world. But what we can do here as Black people to change our reality and to have our voice and occupying our space, we're already doing that. It just needs more movement of engagement. We need to do more discussions where we can occupy every space that is available. There's a lot of people who are engaged. There's a lot of people working so that we have opportunities, and the search for knowledge, the search uh, to getting the clients to know that we are part of this and that we want to occupy every space that is available, and that the Black population needs to have access to money, to have a freedom of choice, and to have freedom of choosing the path Black people want to choose. It's a hard fight, but it's surprising that in the 21st century, in 2020, we still have to talk about racism. And it's something that it hurts a lot. It's something that really bothers us because it removes the, the freedom of choice and removes access from hers so that we can develop uh, in terms of economy, in terms of life choices, because the money is still on the hands of white people. Uh, Black people are having more visibility through publicity, but the cachets, the money that Black people get from these jobs is much less than what people get. The Black people moves in the market. They are in large publications, but the amount that Black people get is very low. We don't have representative action here in the economy. Uh, I don't I don't understand how the Brazilian economy has not put a bet on 56% of the population to become part of this economy and move about the economy and bring Brazil to a new and better place in economic
But
wise.
Helder, in your industry, which is a fairly specialized industry, do the Black models earn as much as the white models? Because it is a very specialized industry. So your top models, are they earning the same across the board? Did you?
Não, não,
No.
os cachês são
The
diferenciados.
cachets are different, the amount received are different. WA is the only agency that is specialized in Black models. So for you to say that I'm happy that we are a specialized agency that would not be real, because I would like to have, I would like Brazil to have more agencies. There was a diversity of agencies where Black models can transit, because the cliches are different. The We are the base of the cliches that white people get, and to reivindicate that place of being a specialized agency is problematic, because many times in our agency they are boycotted, and we ourselves are boycotted for specializing in this,
Yeah.
because when social media arrives in this scenario, we stopped receiving some campaigns because the cachets started reducing in amount, and there's a lot of clients that stop calling our agency because they do not want to pay the fair amount to Black models.
Well, we have a question from someone in our viewing audience, and Helder, it is to you. The question is: have you seen an improvement in the acceptance of Black models in Brazil since your agency has come into being?
So that is a great question. There is a moment in Brazil of no modesty, and before, during, and after of WA models and inside the beauty industry. So in the 2000s, there was no agency that would represent Black people inside the fashion industry, because Black people didn't feel represented in this scenario. They didn't see themselves in publicity campaigns or in catwalks. When WA came with a political process, we start to intensify and promote these professionals through a model course. So through that, we had the opportunity uh, to achieve great campaigns, big marketing campaigns. And this worked. Some international brands and national brands started looking at this niche that was being born in Brazil. With this, agencies that didn't have Black models, they started to observe our work in WA, and they started to have one, two, or three Black people in their cast. This made me happy. That was my objective. That Black models would have visibility and be part of uh, of promotions of model work. We intensified our policies and with justice system here, and we're able to make it compulsory in São Paulo Fashion Week to include a percentage of Black models in their catwalks. So when this happens, the market changes the way they see Black people, and they can start to see that Black people have a purchase power, and with Lula and access of credits to the poorest people in Brazil, uh, people start to have access to money and being able to buy and have a say inside the economy. And so that through that, we're able to have a representation in commercial publicity as well,
The purchasing
because it was
power,
2 decades of a lot of fighting for that to be
yeah,
achieved.
the purchasing power is very important because everything really revolves around the business. But I just want us to shift it a little bit, Sheryland, for you to come in here to talk about Black Lives Matter, and if the whole Black Lives Matter movement has had an impact on the thing called, on the Black beauty and Black beauty being accepted in on a national or an international landscape?
Sure. So first, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, what are we saying? Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter movement was organized on the principle as a response to police being unjustly dangerous, fatal, harmful to people of color, Black people in America. And the movement was initiated to bring attention to the fact that there is this discrepancy that needs to be named, addressed, and properly dealt with. Now, since the inception of Black Lives Matter, it has grown all over the world, and many different communities have also tacked on their own specific needs to that cause. All of these are very important to the communities that they're in. And when we're talking about representation and acknowledging Black people as people that should be protected and treated fairly, we also have to address the stereotypes that we associate with Black people. There is a stereotype that Black men are very violent. There's a stereotype that Black women are very sexual. There's a stereotype that Black children are disrespectful and very aggressive, that Black children are thieves and unintelligent and are only good for their physical prowess, for athletic abilities. And it's just not necessarily true. So when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we're also trying to get people to challenge some of these negative perceptions that they may have about Black people, whether they hold it in the forefront of their mind or whether it's in the back of their mind as a bias that has been taught to them that they hadn't really recognized. For example, when I was in China in 2009, I was afforded an opportunity to travel to Shanghai, my first trip outside of the United States. And I was followed around the store. And my first thought was, oh, they think I'm gonna steal something. Oh, how awful. I'm not one of those people. But later, I was told that I was followed because they thought I was gonna buy something. Over there, the stereotype of Black people is closely tied to, at least at that time, was closely tied to African merchants, importers, who would go and buy up the store, buy all merchandise, and take it back home. So my Amerocentric perception of their perception of my Blackness was actually quite different. And I think that when it comes to the modern inception of Black Lives Matter, we're trying to interject humanity into the perception of Black people and to show that there is a spectrum of what it is to be Black and what it is to be human and what it is to be a Black woman and all the intersections that intertwine with Blackness that just serve to prove and show our humanity.
We have a couple questions from viewers, and this is for you, Sheryland.
Absolutely.
What has your experience been being a Black model in the US? Are Black models accepted in the US? Does the racism that pervades the US society also pervade the modeling industry? And do you feel maligned and discriminated against as a Black model in the US?
Oh, woo, woo, okay. Let's start with the first question. My experience being a Black model in the US has been semi-charmed. There are times where I feel like I can do no wrong, where I feel like I'm on an upswing, like I'm heading towards being able to model full time, which is a model's dream. And you never quite get there and you don't know what it takes. Do I need to be thinner? Do I need to get plastic surgery? Do I need to change my hair? Is the aesthetic of the very narrow aesthetic of what's a beautiful Black model, is it shifting from under me? You never really quite know. So my experience being a Black model in the United States has been very up and down. I model whenever I can because I love the theater of it. I love playing pretend. I think it's so fun. But as far as making it a full-time occupation, still working on it.
And a related question.
Sure.
What made you decide to enter a beauty competition in Brazil?
Okay, that's a funny story. So in 2000, where were we? 16, I was in a batucada, and we decided to try and fundraise and go to Brazil, the birthplace of samba, to learn from these masters and mestres, from these organizations who have been doing Brazilian percussion music for way longer and way better than us. So we fundraised and we went. And it was on that trip that I first saw the Beleza Negras, and it stuck with me. I took a few dance classes, I saw a few competitions, and it was stamped in my mind of, don't forget this. You know how you live in the moment and you try and remind yourself while you're in the moment, don't forget this, don't forget this, don't forget this, this is important. Years later, my batucada goes back to Pittsburgh, and we have a mestre come in to teach a workshop to my batucada, and we're playing Afro samba reggae rhythms, and I started doing the movements, and he goes, hey, you're pretty good, you should try out for it. And I'm like, they don't let foreigners do that. I mean, I'm crazy enough to try it, but they don't let foreigners do that. And so I applied, and I got an email back saying, can you come down to Brazil? And I was like, yes, I can. And I went.
And the experience was worth it, I'm sure.
It was beyond anything that I could have imagined. I'm not crying, by the way. I'm just, it was amazing. Because like I was saying earlier, when I first saw the women from Muzenza performing and showing themselves, I saw me up there. And so when I got the opportunity to actually be up there, it was almost like taking a grape from the table of heaven. There's a buffet table in heaven, and there's a pantheon of beauty and strength and history, and someone has allowed you to taste it. So of course I ran, I tried, I did, I flew, and I've never experienced anything like that. And I don't think I'll ever experience anything like that again. It was beautiful.
Just to take us back a bit, Helder, to the Black Lives Matter, is Brown, or has Brown and Black Brazil been able to leverage on the Black Lives Matter movement? Because I think the Black Lives Matter movement, although it started in the States, really went global. So did it impact Brazil at all? And have you in any way been able to leverage? Hello. Are we good with volume?
O movimento Black Lives
The
Matter.
Black Lives Matter movement is really important here in Brazil because Brazil receives a lot of positive outcome that comes from the United States. And despite our population being 56%, we still suffer we still suffer repercussions because here because they still block Black people that manifest themselves here. So when the United States creates a movement where Black people can talk out, and that impacts a lot here in a positive way, because it makes that the publicity market here in Brazil sees that it's an ignorant step to uh, ignore completely this movement that is happening. It's coming from the US, that Black people here have the right of go and come back to move about. But especially the movements that the Black movement is making there in the US right now, it's really making great impact here, and we really need to take charge and uh, make use of the what's happening there, and get that energy and put it on to the modeling and public agencies here, publicity agencies here. But we need to punctuate here. We need to say constantly that Black models need to be represented here, that we need to be in campaign X or Y, because we don't say that doesn't happen. But because if you come from outside here, you can notice the colorism that happens here. But in publicity, in fashion industry, the representation is negligent. We are not represented in soap operas. When you watch movies, it seems like you're in Sweden, Germany, any Nordic place. You don't feel like you're in Brazil. You don't feel like you're in a mixogenated place that has indigenous people, caboclos. You don't feel there's Black people here, and this is very shameful, but it's a reality in our country.
Yeah, another question for you, Helder, from one of our viewers. Is the racism of the Brazilian modeling industry different in Sao Paulo, different to that in Bahia? And is Bahia more accepting of Black models than Sao Paulo? Or is it the same all over Brazil? And perhaps you could just give us an idea in terms of percentages of Blacks in Sao Paulo and as it relates to, compared to Bahia.
Ó, eu sou baiano.
So I'm from Bahia, so I'll be able to speak on Bahia's behalf. So Bahia is the is the second state with most Black people outside of Africa, and is the most racist state that it exists. So in Bahia, the whirlwinds that happen, the hurricanes are Black. The singers that are in Bahia are always white. The Black singers do not have space. It's a great fight for Black artists, Black singers to have any opportunity. Uh, the example of this is Mariane de Castro and Edson Gomez. That is they are both veterans in reggae and in their genres, and they reivindicates the uh, Black people's position in society, and being an activist artist is not, it doesn't get his place, because the the whiteness the white movements do not want him to show that message in their in they want to publicate that message. There is a difference here, because here we already know that we're Black here in Bahia, and so we understand that from very soon, from very early on in our lives. In São Paulo, that also happens, but it's very punctual, and it's sparse, because there's no concentration of Black people in one area, so that we can't intensify that fight in a way that we can align the way we speak, so that we're speaking about the same thing. There's a lot of people in São Paulo that fight against racism, but in distinct places. I think that's the difference between racism Bahia and racism in São Paulo. because in Bahia there's a great concentration of Black people that have this conscience on the roots and comes from the crib. But in São Paulo, it's different. And the movements are not very interconnected. And I feel that in my work. I feel very lonely in a place like São Paulo, having an agency specialized in Black models. I would like someone like Mayara Justino, that was excluded after winning our contest, to unite so that we could bring our ideas together and fight for our space in the market.
But does the general population, Black population, see this as important? Because you mentioned united. Do they see it as something that's important and worth the fight?
Aqui no Brasil,
So here in Brazil, the Black population has a choice. They either work to survive or they ask for the rights. So everyone that asks for the rights, they're punished. They're blocked. They have a lack of opportunity. They're excluded from play. So there's a good amount of Black people here in our population that identify the structural racism and ends up losing motivation and thinking that they can't. But I can guarantee that we can fight for a right every day a bit more and believe that this transformation is possible. But nowadays, it's notorious that a big part of the Black population here, uh, they know that it's important to fight, but they're repressed. They have a lack of will, and they don't believe that they can fight without suffering boycotts.
If we can look at what's happened over the past 2 days in the US, which would be the electing the new president and the vice president. And I find the issue around the vice president quite interesting. Kamala Harris, who's identified as African American, but those in the Caribbean, we see all the different ethnicities, the Indian and the different ethnicities, and the Caribbean that's part of her ethnic makeup. How do you think she will, or what impact do you think she will have on the image and the beauty, because we're talking about the beauty industry? What will that have with people of color? Sheryland?
Sure. I was just on some note. I think that it's important to acknowledge both Vice President, Madam Vice President's biracial ethnicity, her biracial heritage. For Americans of a certain age, even though it's not a legal precedent, the one-drop rule still applies. So for a lot of well-meaning people, when they say that Madam Vice President is a Black person, I don't think that is necessarily intended as erasure to not specifically name her Indian side. I would like to think that I would like to extend some goodwill into that. So I do want to add that to this conversation as well. What was the question?
How she will impact how people view women of color.
Absolutely. I think
more now than even the president-elect.
Yes.
Topic in the past couple of days.
Oh, people have been celebrating in the streets. It's been such a beautiful expression of joy that we haven't been able to openly see each other and celebrate for a long time because of the dread that and the jagged edges that the American political landscape has developed developed. I think that Madam Vice Presidents, or should I say Madam Vice President-elects, just by her existing in this space will add to the spectrum of what it means to, or the possibilities of, or the representations of being a Afro-descendant person in America. I love it. She's educated, so we see the range. The stereotype of Black women sometimes can be pretty negative. And with Madam Vice President-elect's presence, her presence alone, it shows that there is a range and there's a humanity, that there's this extreme and that extreme and everything in between, and they're all valid. They're all valid. And I love that. I love that for us. I love that for what that adds to the conversation of what it means to be a Black woman of any ancestry, of any descendancy, anywhere in the world. And it's so important to show that all of our experiences, our histories, our stories, our potential, it's all valid.
The important thing for me there with what you said is the range, that we see the range, and I think that is something positive that Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will bring to the table and will bring to the discussion. Just as I was seeing the range with the Black Lives Matter, with the all the protests, I was also seeing a range in there. It was just not predominantly just Afro-Americans. It was a mixture of brown Americans, of, well, Caucasian Americans. But I think one is now beginning to see the range, and hopefully that will kind of focus differently in terms of the acceptance, what is accepted as beauty. We have a question from one of our viewers, Candia Alfred, is asking, given the global community has become more vocal, what movements towards proper inclusion, if any, are being made in this industry? And I guess she's talking about the modeling industry, the beauty industry. And where there do you get a sense it is genuine or pandering? Sheryland, you want to go with this? Sheryland?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up quite a bit.
Travou, eu acho.
It jammed here.
Helga, did you hear the question? You can probably run with it.
Eu não ouvi a pergunta.
I wasn't able to hear the question, jammed.
Okay, are you hearing me now? So I'll repeat the question for you. Given the global community global community has become more vocal, what movements towards proper inclusion, if any, are being noticed in this industry? And where there do you get a sense that it is genuine or pandering?
Ah, sim, sim. A globalização, a eleição de Barack
Globalization and the election as Barack Obama as a president, the election of
da atriz que ganhou o prêmio, a Lupita,
Lupita,
representa muita coisa no mundo.
that all represents a lot in the world, because in that way we're able to connect the Black population, and the Black population starts to have a self-esteem improved, and they start to believe that they occupy every space and creates hope that we can achieve. And if Barack Obama can achieve, then we can also achieve. Different from before 2008, we didn't have people, Black people occupying those spaces. So I want to also leave clear that globalization connects us through speech instantly. And nothing goes unnoticed nowadays. So we have instantaneous manifestation when there's an act of structural racism that happens in any place in the world. So about Kamala Harris, I wanted to say that beauty is ephemeris. It passes, but what stays is our legacy. Uh, I can say as a black man uh, that reflects in, it must reflect in politics, it must reflect socially, it must reflect in the lives of black women because we represent a lot. For us here, who won it was Kamala Harris. We're very happy with the result. And to finish, it's really important to have that globalization sense so that we can say what we came here for and that we can affirmate our objectives.
Thank you very much. Another question from one of our viewing audience to Sheryland. Are Black models accepted in the US? Does the racism that pervades the US society also pervade the modeling industry? And do you feel maligned and discriminated against in the US within the modeling industry?
So fortunately, I think that there's more of an acceptance of the range of representation of Black women in modeling. I remember there was a time where most of the models that were considered beautiful were light-skinned, straight-haired, maybe hazel-colored eyes. And that just didn't represent a lot of the people in my community, my family members. I didn't see myself in that beauty. At the time, I was too young to be tall and too prepubescent to be thin. And so I didn't see myself projected as a version. Nowadays, we're seeing more of a range of what's considered beautiful. We're seeing the women who were taunted in middle school, high school, walk the most exclusive catwalks, tall, dark, huge lips, cheekbones for days, shaved heads, which is traditionally something that women use to indicate like wealth or beauty or health. And introducing that phenotype to the lexicon of what is considered beautiful, I think is amazing. And somewhere in those extremes, people are creating a standard of beauty that centers themselves, that doesn't rely on punishing or attacking other people whose centers of beauty who look different from them, and that respects the different ways that people choose to enhance whatever beauty or aspect of their beauty that they feel that they have. I think it's wonderful. I love that it's changing. I love that people, not only with dark skin, but people with different bodies are being presented as beautiful, as being presented as valid. Now, with that, there is a chance, there is a risk of fetishization. There's a risk. But having people in these positions to present themselves as, this is my standard of beauty, this is the beauty that I woke up with, and it is valid, I think it's so beautiful. I think it's lovely.
Right.
So are Black models accepted in the United States? Yes. Are Black models as published, as highly paid as some of the other ethnicities or phenotypes of models? As with Brazil, maybe not. We're still fighting for equality in a lot of ways. But I do think it's getting a lot better. Does racism pervade does racism exist or in the modeling agency? It's hard to say racism specifically as a hard and fast absolutely, because it's masked behind brand aesthetic, behind luxury labels wanting a certain phenotype versus casual labels wanting a certain phenotype. So it's hard to point out and say, this is racist, that is racist, unless you've lived that firsthand experience. And I personally haven't. So I wouldn't go on that limb to say that. Have I ever felt maligned and discriminated? Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, Sheryland.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned about standard of beauty. I just wanted to say that the current Miss Universe, Zosie, is from South Africa. And she did win the Miss Universe pageant. More than the color, I think was the fact that she had short natural hair. That was just talked about all over. So perhaps
absolutely
that is some progress there. That is some progress.
I love it. I love it. I am not my hair, right?
Right.
I love it because it shows that there's the view of what's beautiful for Black women is broadening. It's not so myopic anymore. It's not so narrow anymore. And it allows for people who don't necessarily look specifically one ethnicity or another. Because with Black people, things tend to get really narrow and claustrophobic now that we have the range of these queens with all these body types. Some have differently abled bodies, different complexions, freckles everywhere. Oh, I love it.
I think
because it shows that no matter where you come.
I think in addition to it broadening, what I'm seeing is that we're moving away from the Caucasian stereotype. Because for many, many years, the stereotype of a beauty queen was really based on a Caucasian stereotype. So I think more than broadening, it's nice to see it's moving away from that and into its own original look.
Absolutely.
Right. If Helder, we've got a question for you, and please excuse my pronunciation, my Portuguese. What is the political impact of Aiyê during the Noite da Beleza Negra in Bahia? And why does it not influence the Black beauty in São Paulo? Are we okay with volume and repeat?
You're kind of coming in and out.
Well, the volume is up. The volume is up. Did you hear any of it, Helder? My volume is fully up.
Não ouvi. Falhou.
I wasn't able to hear. It jammed.
Okay, that particular one has gone off my screen. Okay, and there's another one here for you. Let me see. Right. Lecturers at the UWI have told us about the introduction of quotas in the Brazilian system to allow for representation of Blacks in public positions in Brazil. Is there a need to have quotas for the media and modeling industries as well?
Essa pergunta ela é muito importante para eu esclarecer uma dúvida.
This question is very important to clear up a question. So until 2008, I was against Black quotas in Brazil, but I always justify myself against the quotas because I would say that I'm against Black quotas because in our constitution, it clearly says that we must guarantee education, home ownership, sanitation system to all citizens in the US and in Brazil. But why do we all pay taxes here if we must also take those responsibilities onto ourselves? And then I started seeing that black quotas was important because of structural racism that would deny us to access to those things, and that quotas would make it easier, and it would force the white movements uh, to release those opportunities to the black population. As Sabini, Rihanna, Beyonce are black women, and all these movements that started happening in this last decade uh, helped us in a way that we were able to uh, put a drive to drive our agenda because the capitalist system is trying to capitalize on this already, and so we're trying to look for our own opportunities. They're seeing that we need visibility in all spaces, and what we haven't achieved yet is the freedom of choice, and for the money uh, to arrive in our hands so that we can make our own choices. Because here in Brazil, there's a culture of showing black people as a trophy. Black people come here from very poor backgrounds. Only 7% of black people here are rich. So white people go to Salvador, uh, they go into the outskirts, into the periphery areas, and they find a black boy that was not allowed to dream. They find that boy from the outskirts. They put him in the center of São Paulo. They launched his career, and they say, "Ah, we have launched his career. He used to live in favelas. He used to pick up trash, and here we've helped them. And we just this is not what we want. We want to have a freedom of choice to go about. We should not depend on that to be represented. We don't find that to be a sustainable way of gaining our space." And sorry, I spoke really fast.
No, not at all. Let me get back to the question that you did not hear. And it is, what is the political impact of Aiyê during the Noite da Beleza Negra in Bahia? And why doesn't it influence the beauty industry in São Paulo as well?
Porque a Bahia
Because Bahia because Bahia makes up most of the black population here in Brazil, and Bahia as a whole history that represents black people, that reflects not on São Paulo but all over the world. But everything that is produced in Bahia by the black population is seen and is taken upon by the whole nation and by the whole black population here in Brazil.
Another question for you, Helder, from Alison Souza. What is the impact expected with the Black Vice President of the US? It is a great victory for all of us, or is it a great victory for all of us? Are we having volume issues, or? Sheryland, are you there?
Sim, representa muito ter a Kamala Harris como vice-presidente.
It represents a lot having Kamala Harris as the vice president here in Brazil. For Black people here, she is the president for us. She represents us a lot, and and we really want her to influence our country socially and politically, because the victory from Joe Biden yesterday already reflects here, and our president here is already felt the impact of what happened. There was a great impact of what happened in the US. And there's the whole political strategy, it needs to be changed because they see that Black people are very conscious of their role in the world. And we want to follow what the US did and do the same manifestation here in Brazil, following the steps of the US and the victory of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
And a similar question for you, Sheryland. Do you think that the president and vice president-elect will make a difference to the view people have of women of color? The US has had a Black president for 8 years, and not much has been done to affect the systemic racism which exists in the US. So would an elderly white man push the Black agenda forward, notwithstanding his Black VP?
So
Sheryland,
you kind of came in and out on that. So I'm going to try and repeat it back to you to see if I understood you. Oh wait, I see it here. Do I think that the president and vice president-elect make a difference in the view people have of women of color? Yes. The US has a Black president for 8 years, and that much has been done to affect the systematic racism which exists in the US. Would an elderly white man push the Black agenda forward, notwithstanding his Black VP? I think that with Madam Vice President-elect there's more of a visual representation and expectation of accountability there. As with all politicians, I would venture to say all politicians, for the help that they've done to certain demographics, it could be considered harmful to others. Madam Vice President-elect has definitely had her share of answering to the American people when it comes to her record as a lawyer or working with the police departments and having to answer to, if we expect you to help protect Black people, then how do you answer for your conviction rate or your trial rate as a prosecutor? Everyone's got some dirt, and unfortunately it becomes a matter of what candidate or what person do you think that you can deal with the best to get your socio-political economic needs met. Right now in the forefront of America, trying to protect Black people is in the forefront. And I think that with Biden having served under a Black president, assuming that he's seeing and hearing the conversations that happen in back offices about the experiences and life experiences of Black people, and then becoming president, and then having an African American, a Black vice president by his side to help him steer the ship, I should hope very greatly that a lot of progress will be made towards equality and humanizing the view of Black people within the United States. Hopefully that also gravitates outwards towards the world, but specifically here in the United States.
Yeah, I think her mere presence is a positive for women of color. It's without a doubt, it's a positive. Notwithstanding that she's a bright woman, good personality, but I think just the fact that there is a woman of color who is vice president for the US is a very positive move.
Yes.
And one can only embrace
And
that
there's
with hope.
accountability.
With hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, I was saying there's a perceived accountability there.
With hope.
Part of the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I'm just checking with the technicians. How are we doing for time? How are we on time?
We're okay.
Okay, go ahead.
You can go ahead, Janelle.
Okay. Yes, Sheryland, if you can just wrap up your comment. And then we move to Helder, because Helder's doing some interesting things
Absolutely.
other than the, or in addition to the modeling agency. So go ahead, Sheryland.
Yeah, in conclusion, I think that the mere presence of her presents like an assumed accountability that there's someone that we look to, that we expect to be on the side of equality and justice. And we're all very much looking forward to what that process would be. And we're more excited about reaching that outcome.
Thank you. Okay, if we can just move to Helder for a minute, because earlier today I saw some of the fantastic work that you're doing. So if you can just, I think hopefully we can get some of the photographs on. And if you can just give us a little idea of what it is. Briefly, Helder has a sustainable development project where he takes used household items and turns them into clothing. So there all along we were thinking that Helder was just all model agency, but also out comes a design aspect of his talent and skill. So if you can just run us through what we're seeing on the screen or the materials you've used for these designs on screen.
Ai, bacana.
Yes, very joyful. It's my sustainable work. It's through Aquarella. It's a project, a dream of creating a conscious people that enter HDA in the importance of saving the environment through a selective collection of trash and also the preservation of the environment through planting trees. We have we plant around 100 trees a year, and one of our values is to care for the environment, but also bring that discussion about to young people the importance of taking care of the environment through the importance of social responsibility
Right.
and collecting and disposing appropriately of our trash and developing clothes from plastic, from straws. Do a lot of interventions with Black models in public places in the city of São Paulo
If,
and
if, you, if you
some other
can,
agencies that are
if you,
also
okay,
all over Brazil.
if you can run the photographs back again and just give us an idea of what it is you use, because we're seeing fabulous design, the materials that you use in the designs that we're seeing on screen.
Sim. Essa é uma blusa de lacre, de refrigerante, com canudos que eu juntei de um bar de um amigo meu. Ele juntou para mim, aí eu lavei e fui fazendo a construção dessa roupa.
So this clothing comes from straws and the aluminum seals in soda cans that I got from the bar of one of my friends. And my dream is to have two performances, one in Central Park, and one in Parc de France in Paris. This dream, I'm going to this dream. I'm going to bring about the importance of caring for the environment through this work, and this is going to give me a lot of exposure throughout the world, I believe.
And what are we looking at on the screen here? What's the material used in
It,
these designs?
this clothing were developed because a stylist here in Brazil uh, did was responsible for catwalk in São Paulo Fashion Week, and he put the steel wool on the heads of white models here in Brazil, and they said that it
Yeah.
represented the hair of black women, and uh, yeah, he said we can use steel wool uh, as black people, but in our clothing, not our hair, because steel wool has a great role in our lives and around tropical countries.
Touche, touche with that, with the steel wool that was used in those designs. So you're looking forward to
Wow.
showing your designs in Central Park and in Paris, yes?
Sim, Central Park.
Yes, Central Park and Paris and New York. I believe that I'm going to New York to do this show, and I'm going to go to the two different extremes, America and Europe. These are the two cities that I want to show my art, so that I can use that as a stepping stone to open my doors to the world, bringing the black models with me that are my stars, that are the stars of this performance.
They certainly are the stars. I don't think they would have looked as good on any other kind of model, any other complexion. What is this we're looking at here? What is the material on this one?
Esse material aí é jornal, papel machê. E
This is a newspaper, mache paper, and the skirt is made in by mache paper, and the shirt is from PT bottles, plastic bottles, and steel.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're about to wrap up in a few minutes. So both Sheryland, um, if you can, probably leave us with your thoughts and comments. Both Sheryland and Hilda. So whoever wants to go first.
Sure, so I'll go. I want to thank the organizers of this event for making this conversation possible. I'm honored to be here, and I'm very, very grateful to add my experience to this conversation, exploring the narratives of these themes. Much respect and honor to all the organizers of the event. Congratulations on a successful conversation. I would love to come back, and I wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for participating. Hilda?
Eu quero agradecer.
I would like to thank the opportunity for the whole staff, for the whole movement that the festival is doing. To invite Sheryland to feel the emotion here that happens in HDA. It will be a pleasure to receive here when you're here in Brazil. Come visit us and light the torch here once again in HDA towards this movement. Thank you so much for inviting me. I would like to thank Beatriz Mello that has been helping us with HDA. I would like to thank you, Miss Universe of 77. It represents a lot, so much to me. It represents the Black population all around the world. It wasn't 77, but you had to win there to influence future generations. And here, today, I have the privilege to bring the satisfaction of being next to uh, um, kisses and hugs to you, because it's a great pleasure to be here and be part of this and power to us.
I absolutely agree with you that it's about influencing the future generations, and thank you very much for saying that. Well, we've come to the end of 20 Conversations in 2020, Being Black in the Beauty Industry. My thanks to our participants, Sheryland Neal and Hilda Diaz, and our thanks to you, our viewing audience, for participating. Just a reminder that Black Consciousness Day is celebrated in Brazil on November 20th, and we say congratulations in advance. And I'm Janelle Penny Commissiong, saying, love the skin you're in. Thank you for viewing. See you again.
Thank you very much.
Palma para vocês.
Thank you to
Clap for
participating. Thank you as well to Roberto and Carlos, our interpreters, for a fantastic job. And thank you especially to our audience, those of you who joined us tonight, those who just viewed and those who participated by sending questions. We really appreciate it. Tell a friend, tell a colleague, tell a family member about the festival. Our 20 conversations and 20 cultural activities will continue all through the month of November. Coming up this week, we have tomorrow night, Monday the 9th, of November, a conversation about Afrofuturism 2.0 with Dr. Reynaldo Anderson and Dr. DK Okoro. That conversation will be led by Conrad Paris. On Tuesday, the 10th of November, we have Chef Roberto Masilon of the famous Port-au-Prince restaurant in Silver Spring, Maryland, who is going to teach us about Haitian food and its history and how to make some of those wonderful dishes. On Wednesday, the 11th, we go back to our conversations, and this conversation will be entitled A Space Where Blackness in Art Can Breathe. And the conversation will be led by Dr. Marsha Pierce of the University of the West Indies, and she'll be discussing the theme with artists Kren Critchlow and Awodia Sampson. All of the events will take place at 7 p.m. Trinidad and Tobago time, which will be 8 p.m. in Brazil and 6 p.m. in various parts of the United States. You can find all of the information about the conversation and all of the links to be able to register and join at www.theblackconsciousnessfestival.com. Don't forget to submit the names of your ancestors that you would like to have honored on our website in the Ancestral Memorial page. Thank you very much for having joined us, and we wish you a wonderful evening.
Boa noite.
Good night.
Thanks a lot. See you guys sometime. In Bahia, in São Paulo. Who knows? In
Thank you so much from my heart.
Bye-bye.